Did it feel there would never be old age and infirmity? Will you listen to my story, set in days of former glory? We are like trees blown by the breeze, casting off leaves moment after moment. Wait, I must concentrate to make the wind blow only in one direction. I will give you a description of the birth of Quinlan. It was a blessing for us.
He didn't look like us.
The difference was slight.
His father was a stranger to us in the village.
Marion, his mother, was the same as us.
She had dark hair waving in curls,
Long arms that worked by the fire.
preparing her father his bread and her gravy.
She didn't complain that he'd gone.
She'd not hide, as has been customary.
Her grin would describe his growth, and she'd laugh in her throat. Marion took no other from among us, which was courageous.
Her sanctuary being the open air of summer,
Through autumn her belly grew.
while she lay heavy with him growing,
We drew round her, told our tales to protect her,
she never neglected to smile.
or sense the alarm at our fright.
Her sight felt bright as a fire for us.
She'd listen and take heed, he'd feel no despair, he need never have known, being sown from innocence.
Her lips parted in the depth of winter for her son, this being a blessing. Marion stood with the baby, enraptured at her door. She called to us.
He made no fuss. Come and look upon Quinlan.
For a start he heard something of her rustling while she bustled about.
He felt that hand on his heart when he heard her shout.
His head was already out.
Quinlan, you may no longer be mischievous. Now you are one of us. I've stopped myself from starving. I was craving to feed you. Later I shall wean you.
And the boy grew.
He'd not been taught how to read.
Nor to invoke charms that would do harm.
Quinlan was presently the pleasantest of boys.
The joys that he could perform included the exploitation of a great laugh.
Marion was healthy.
Grew wealthy.
When one day she said, in speaking to us,
For all my scarfs I languish in silent language. May he have a strong marriage. Never mind the horse, the carriage, the books, the flute. Those are notes apart from human heart. Looking at Eladir, our home appears near, while the weather, the height of the sky, oddly goes between stars. Pinched diamonds, tapped by whose fingers? My mind lingers over long widened angles. Who goes on stretched toes?
Quinlan was dazed. He grew pale. His mother said,
I asked for an escort to breathe me into a dream. Who got caught in that realm looking for happiness? Don't look so fraught. Our love is not hopelessness, as lovers confess.
Her direction she found. Who knows why she spoke no further?
She'd never been niggardly towards Quinlan.
Gave him her protection.
Evil caused her consternation.
Love radiated through her.
We talked rather a lot, plotting returning Marion to the earth.
There we remained, still and sober,
absorbing the sound in each other's mind.
In the end he met Chiron,
They became friends, just boys,
mild and simple,
learning to be nimble.
before manhood.
Quinlan found it incredible, the wonderful forest that bright flighted birds enchanted. There are such songs, silenced by grim passion, in his fashion. It strengthened his resolve to adhere together, even while no other laboured there.
Quinlan had become aware of the fractious stream that gleamed in the glade, in whose shade carp and small fish were displayed.
At this he delighted, a sense of innocence inspired him to dodge near the water upstream until its flow went dry. Quinlan had watched as the cat who'd catch small fry would pass by frog spawn almost unseen to him. His actions were consequential.
Chiron stood beside him as he asked that they should seek out Pon, the great hog, who had so long eluded all of our parties that had sought to hunt for him.
Together they appeared intent, and we sent our blessing with them that night.
Set in our hearts, we retired with considerable confusion,
Yet why shouldn't they break through,
and bring an end to our blighted fields,
where over the months during summer
Pon had often laid waste our preparations over the years.
he had become less diligent of his silence,
It had annoyed us, those nights in his foraging,
when he had gouged the dogs that we sent to surprise him.
Out here I have been struggling.
His voice began.
Out here there are vast wonders that you ought to know.
His words grew in absurdity. Gwenllian,
I was the only one who recollected the cataract, the torrent, as a matter of fact.
it didn't really matter. He had nearly exhausted all protest. Then he pulled from his vest and held in his fingers the dry remnant of a rodent. It was flung by him onto the fire. It crackled like paper as the flame touched that thing.
It caught us unguarded. We felt alarmed by it.
For the rest of us, there was nothing so ludicrous as that night in his story.
All the while we turned up our noses.
There were nights when his purpose ran high. He swallowed whole this world in its mould. As wisdom rang against the cold in the sky,
His holy virtue flew by him.
beckoning now as cold fell from the night. Quinlan voiced a long appeal, entreated us to listen,
Bringing us closer to the fire ring.
with our fingers interlocked. His need emboldened by our warm, curious faces.
He'd never been known to cheat or steal.
He rose. He stood as though he'd journeyed through a passage of childhood to every man facing him.
We thought in the diminished accents of our own childlike excitement.
To the women who sometimes hid their chuckles and struggled to remain in equipoise, he brought strange, distant harmony. It became such a nuisance that we called it
Pon Pig!
Although no one alive had actually seen him, Quinlan was mad enough to believe only he could make the kill quickly.
He wanted to be the first hunter to have a shot.
Then, although he was young, limiting his request to a vest and a choice of our knives. These two were perhaps our best measure,
Deserving success.
being known before their retreat. Quinlan and Chiron spent long summer days among the forest trees. They had found nearly every glen
They knew several of the fox's dens.
where the woodpecker danced, yet they had never had the chance upon
Pon!
The marks he left lay heavy upon everyone in the village.
We began to think there was no way out of it.
Our plans had been wasted then, as Quinlan and Chiron sat in melancholy one night. They caught sight of his bulky form.
Returning over our fields.
They didn't wait to follow him, but went quickly ahead and busied themselves, sheltering.
The pungent sweat we all have.
It was a ticklish problem.
Pon couldn't tell now if he were followed.
He was indirect about where he was going. Quinlan strained to listen, keeping in touch without brushing up too much
Dust cast by the pollen. He had a weakness for sneezing loudly.
Soon after, he'd laugh and be wild.
This became his fiercest enemy,
He never enjoyed the ceremonies.
where he should need to remain silent.
Quinlan, everyone knows that every track will lead the hunters with little disadvantage to encourage their brutal activity and return with pelt and carcass.
Thistles had blown down the hill.
It entangled in our hair as we crouched below the brow.
We felt sure the kill was closer. We could see it, proud around the other side, large,
Dark,
thick,
noisome,
and grunting as he thrashed through the black thorn. We drew perilously close.
he pricked up his ears.
Chiron and me could see his eyes burning
Black.
and raging. The thorn tugged at the boar, who pawed to be free.
He'd grown excited by our presence.
What did he seek in such a wild enmeshing space? He turned face to face with Chiron, freed his disagreeable snout and formidable tusks, and with a frown,
A great noise bore down.
Chiron was flummoxed. The vexed hog disentangled,
Enraged,
with briar along his flanks.
charged,
A roar flung Chiron hard to the ground.
on-wheeled around.
I gave a shout that broke his single aim. Now he became my game. Instantly, I could see his terror turn upon me. I felt astonished.
He moved too quickly.
I spun the shaft and thrust the spear into the ground. The polished surface twisted in my fist.
It pounded down.
I directed the point to his eye.
It caught.
Gratitude governed my actions. The shaft broke.
Satisfaction.
Blinded.
Pain.
I gained some safety. I brought a stone, heaved the swelling slingshot that struck him a blow. He bellowed. Chiron, already upright, over his fright, pierced the neck between the shoulders.
It fell.
Boar was released.
We swallowed hard.
His left eye sparkled as the drear
Burdensome body,
wallowed, despoiled, in displeasure.
so badly used.
We hugged in relief, cried from the release. Disquiet vanished.
The boar vanquished.
We thought it good now to stalk the way forward,
Perhaps we moved in silence.
bearing ourselves like hunters,
Grim.
and innocent of the bloody event. His sow was as wild.
She had backed away when she found us near.
She was filled with fear.
Smelling the dead boar.
From the gore we carried,
The pig attacked to drive us back.
we were stronger. 2 spears appeared to break into her skin.
She crashed with a din that slashed open the sky.
A great gash remains on my chin, where my hand, too slow to snatch, letting go, made my own shaft crack my face.
Displacing ecstatic victory for a grim reminder.
We grin now, feeling kinder, our task to defeat the boar complete.
It was only now that we saw the 4 piglets
Silent.
watching.
We ran them to ground. It was so easy.
Their legs were short.
Their bristles soft. We bagged 3.
The 4th ran free.
We have brought them here. They have become our fortune.
And our damnation.
Salvation.
and damnation. Quinlan sought to keep on his feet.
The three young screechers grew strong that before long formed their partnership and offspring.
This larger number were doubled before winter, and the following summer Quinlan could see he was a farmer.
A stock breeder.
He was the leader, the first of us to have the opportunity to take his seat.
No longer always needing to hunt meat.
The piggery freed him.
The community were assured that
There should always be sufficient to eat. Many forgot that kind of madness which had got into him, remembering only that
Pond Pig the marauder had been carried by 6 of them,
from the glen
where the men had withstood the robust charge.
no one now recollected when the hog was at large, so quickly made domestic, so easy to keep, staying around the village all day.
They hardly required to be watched, so good was our lot.
Quinlan's eyes began wandering. Occasionally he'd sing.
Often he'd be found laughing quietly.
Quickly he would look away, as if he wanted to take thought of another day.
Maybe he wanted domesticity.
Soberly he thought a lot about that, Quinlan.
One day Quinlan saw the woman, a girl who had been close beside him. She had been studying him.
Wondering what love had come upon him. This mother-to-be who sat you on her knee needs no description from me, Quinlan.
She found herself rueful, although keen not to be neglectful, should she settle out here.
Who had superpowers, made glamorous the hours, waiting to be welcomed amorously.
She would keep Quinlan talking, all the while stalking their best opportunity to be alone.
She made their home. Quinlan no longer roamed alone, dejected, ranging the hills, fit to meet nobody, watching all, not making a friend.
We can all see the clouds scudding by, the sun on high, the sea rolling by, yet who can tell what others see?
He, startled, quite sought to hide his shyness in this feeling of oneness. She took him as innocent as he towards the home that she wanted. It was difficult for her to swallow this morsel of happiness.
She was touchy, like you would be if you lost your country.
To believe that life lived in a single property. Only to this she was coming. Constant to him, losing for herself, relinquishing for Quinlan.
Suppose I were to go.
Her hand touched his swollen belly, the bodywork of his dreams.
Suppose I were to go, leaving you, not wishing to stay. Your carcass, infirm now, would be the worse for us loving it.
She grinned and licked at his nose, that part that shadows, that bit which mellows where tears roll on the cheeks. Quinlan tried to convince himself that she would disappear as that woman.
He had no fear of any wonder, as he could seek peace.
He asked if she could supply the steps to correct his impression of this suffused paradise, this grass which brought a constant refreshedness to his back and neck.
She stole her arm behind him, drew him into her skin, loving.
Quinlan wakened. His body ached and all fell into place. The sky and the sun were blotted out by his vision.
All sense of well-being he began realizing relied upon the name that love had given him.
Her gentle eyes were violet with compassion.
He saw where he had built the fire that had gone cold while he slept.
His fingers arched as he crept onto his knees, and he kept his fingers in his mouth as children do in those innocent years.
He saw his mother, his wife. He saw life as much as a man can do. Women are exceptional, incredible, formidable.
She blew her breath softly over his face.
He tasted innocent merriment, although he barely chuckled.
He let out a sound, hardly audible, enraptured.
It captured his imaginings.
It brought laughter to Quinlan. His eyes brightened.
Certainly there were disappointments.
He could hardly contain himself. Was it like being born, dying? He'd not reconciled this when she bumped into him, determined and grim-set for the task. Merely an exercise.
She blew through his house and made it more like home again. Sisters, children, and a normally large dinner at the table. Who'd be refused?
It took him too long to get straight. He'd always thought it normal to be wild somewhere. Here would do.
Bawdy and raucous.
Not very dangerous.
The land unadventurous.
Full of perilous mushrooming toadstools in the dank ground.
No sound they make as they take their own time in unfolding.
Welding Quinlan in his firm position. She had never promised that he should reach salvation.
Her laughter like wind playing around the orchard.
Quinlan had been a fool to listen, as though she were the truth of his imagining, always proclaiming,
If she'd addressed you as I've heard, we could find tranquillity. She carries me far from disharmony.
He walked as one entranced.
Who comes here following the wind?
Quinlan danced joyful, like in a festival. There was no stopping him. He found glee in all he was doing. His task complete, he took off, feet flying, upset by nothing, leaving his hearth and his family for their best fortune. Striding along, keen to hear her song, he withdrew to that place of solitude among the dreamstones on the promontory. He thought this would be a place she frequented. Perhaps he slipped. Maybe she pushed him.
His head bobbed in the sea,
Where we found him among the ripples.
close into the shore.
Only his body.
We searched the hill.
No sign of him. That must have been left beyond our imaginings. We desired to give the mason our burial. We knew the ceremony.
Martha, keen in her wailing, felt no warmth from the fire. His children comforted her, yet a saddening spectacle.
This was a year of grace, long after the war, where our forefathers had defended her sovereignty and mighty freedom.
This being now a year of awe, there have been none who talk of her speaking alone to themselves.
As had Quinlan. Oh, Quinlan said to us that no one, I guess, could run as quickly as the wind.
I can rally enough secrecy. Who'd come before everyone? Any to tell nobody that I'd ever much care and listen with rapt attention. There is a question. Where are you coming from?
Is it that wise to carry on, be it a stranger or one who declares her territory is being scurrilously abused?
She fed my inquisitiveness, and there'll be no confessing their way will be to tell her how often I'd felt overpowered by love.
The future, no doubt, will find us barbarians, letting sadness sometimes weigh us down.
Where the wind skims silently out from the sea, mixing on the horizon, black ships appear to me being blown toward this island.
Seeking refuge, he dreamt of his death rather heroically,
Centered peaceably,
Facing adversity,
going lightly,
assured by his memory.
We are like trees, blown by the breeze, casting off leaves, moment after moment. She holds us up as we all drop.